For today's video, as we've done so much Anthropologie content on this channel, I thought it would be a good idea now to recap a lot of our favorite pieces that we found in the Thrift Store Challenge series, as well as some new projects that are infused throughout the video. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. To start this video off, we are going to talk about lighting, which is probably one of my favorite categories in Anthropologie. Every time I go in the store, I'm always impressed with the level of intricacy, and because of that, it is definitely reflected in the price point, but I like to go there first to kind of get some inspiration before I head over to the thrift store, so that way I can go in with an intention. So I found these two large-scale table lamps, and what I liked about them was they would basically be the perfect starting off point for this grid lamp that I loved from Anthropologie so much. So I knew that the base of the table lamp either needed to be like this sort of a shape or cylindrical. So the fact that I found this for just $2 was a major steal, and then I just decided to use washi tape, so it's something super temporary. Should I ever get sick of it, I can just pop it right off. I was able to create this table lamp for just about $4, and I think it is a nice way to get that high-end look on a budget. Next up, let's talk about some artwork pieces that you would find at Anthropologie. So I would say the number one kind of metal tone that they use in framing is definitely brass, which actually works out really well if you love to go thrifting, because a lot of the times you can find really beautiful brass frames that just need a new picture inside. So for example, I found this still life watercolor picture for just 50 cents, and I'm going to take this thrifted brass frame that I found for $5.99, and I'm gonna basically just cut the picture down to the appropriate size, making sure to leave the artist's name at the bottom, and I'm just going to place it inside of this frame. So for just about $8, I can have a really simple but super similar look on a budget. Like many high-end home decor stores, you will find coffee table books or interior design books at Anthropologie, and they're oftentimes very expensive. One of the most expensive books that they carry is by Architectural Digest. This book at Anthropologie and other high-end retailer stores retails for $125. So this little hack is basically going to be like the biggest catfish ever. So what I'm going to do is take this $1 linen bag that I found at my local thrift store that is from Architectural Digest, and I'm basically just going to wrap this Dollar Tree book in this fabric. I initially wanted to wrap a wooden book box, but I couldn't find one that was big enough for the scale of this bag, so I opted to do this book hack instead. So I started off by just removing the top and the bottom of this bag, and then using my seam ripper to kind of just tear through one of the sides, so then that way it was kind of already laid out for me, and I could kind of just hot glue this fabric onto this Dollar Tree book. The main thing that I wanted to make sure was that the graphic was as centered as it possibly could be. Although this book is essentially huge, it still was not quite big enough to get the entire graphic on, so I just did my best to make everything as centered and as straight as possible. I have done on this channel a more detailed tutorial about wrapping different thrifted books in linen fabric, so I can link that in the description box down below for you guys. You essentially though just want to make sure that your cuts are nice and straight, and then immediately apply hot glue to prevent any fraying, so then you don't lose any of your threads, and that way everything looks nice and seamless and you get a nice clean finish on your project. Maybe one day I will decide to pay for that Architectural Digest book, but for now I think that this is a nice alternative if you are on a budget. Another thing that I really love at Anthropologie are their textiles. You can find a lot of really high quality, luxurious textiles at Anthropologie year round, but you can also find them at the thrift store. For example, I found this large scale cozy blanket at the thrift store for just $5, and the luckiest part about it, I feel, is that it was brand new with tags and originally tagged for just under $100. The only issue I found was that one of the strings here had been missing that little furry ball attachment, so I just decided to remove it, so then that way it wasn't so obvious that there was something missing from this blanket. This blanket fits in with my space so well, and it was only $5. Anthropologie carries a lot of nice options for wooden bowls, and we're going to talk just about wooden bowls later on in this video, but for now I wanted to share with you guys a project you guys really liked, which was the wooden bowl hanging planter. So I took this wooden bowl that I had thrifted that had this almost like cappus shell lining on the inside. I removed the shell, I sanded off as much as I could, and then we are just going to take some Dollar Tree reindeer moss and fill the inside, as well as some additional greenery. Now to hang it, I did decide to take my drill first and just kind of pre-drill some pilot holes for these screw eyes to go inside of, because this wood was so tough that it would not immediately go through without some pilot holes being drilled through first. With the screw eyes now in place, it's just time now to add our twine. So I'm just taking some jute twine to each screw eye hook, and I'm going to gather them at the top and make an additional loop so it can hang from a C-hook that I had screwed into my ceiling. One thing I don't love about jute projects is all of the little fibers at the end. They just kind of look messy, so I like to take a lighter, just carefully remove those excess fibers that you really don't need, and it just makes your project look a little bit more finished and complete. A pattern or a print you will see a lot of at Anthropologie is a speckled pattern or print. You'll see it in vases, in platters, in bowls, and that's something that you can definitely come across at the thrift store. For example, I had found this one for $1.99. I grabbed some florals from my local grocery store and I just filled it in this space, and I loved that look. I also recently found a smaller scale version at the Goodwill for just $3. I filled it with 1 rose. I love that look as well. But you could definitely DIY something like this. Take a white base, flick some black paint on there and seal it, and you have a really similar look on a budget. A decor piece I've continually recommended that you guys pick up are brass candle holders. And that is because at stores like Anthropologie, these can be quite expensive. And when you go to the thrift store, you can find such beautiful and unique brass candle holders. For example, I found this candelabra for just $1. It looks so Anthropologie inspired without the Anthropologie price point. I styled this candelabra in my daughter's room. Everything on her dresser is thrifted, and we're really proud of that because we were able to be really resourceful and we saved a lot of money in the process, and it still looks really beautiful. One thing I love about Anthropologie Decor is that they come up with ways to kind of decorate your walls without it necessarily always having to be a piece of artwork. So I'm going to take this thrifted embroidery hoop, this old perfume cap, and I'm going to attach them with some super glue gel together, and then I'm going to take it outside for some spray paint. Because in the description box it said that it's made of iron, I just used several different colors of spray paint to kind of get this iron-like look, and this is how it turned out. When it comes to Anthropologie Decor, a lot of times they use different animals or they'll use busts to really implement this sort of like quirky kind of look. But chances are, if you have very Anthropologie inspired style, you appreciate this sort of quirky quality that sometimes their decor can offer. So I had found this bust on Amazon that I will link down in the description box down below for you guys. And I know the next part is gonna sound just like a little bit morbid, but I really loved this little table lamp. So I drilled a hole through his head using an appropriate drill bit for resin, and that is only because I needed a section for my old thrifted lamp cording to go through because I wanted it to be pretty well secured down there. So I added some super glue gel as well as some E6000, and I was able to stick my bracket for the lampshade to sit on top of it. But looking back on this project, because his head at the top was kind of already pretty flat, I probably could have gotten away with not using my drill at all and just using a Uno lampshade instead of a spider and just attaching a puck light, and I think that that would have been so much quicker and I would have still gotten the exact same look. When we're talking about the wooden bowls that you would find at a store like Anthropologie, it's very different than what you would find at like West Elm or Pottery Barn. All of the wooden decor pieces have these like little sort of extra features. There'll be like a scalloped edge, or there'll be like a honeycomb pattern. So that's really what you want to keep your eyes out for when you're out thrifting. Like I loved this bowl, but it was just a bit too simple for Anthropologie. I also really liked this one. It had this sort of footed bottom and it had almost like a burlwood texture on it, which I thought was really interesting, but there was quite a bit of damage on it. So I decided to pass on it. Then I found this really beautiful wooden tray with this scalloped edge, but the wood tone was just not appropriate for my space. But then I found this one that was perfect. It had a little bit of that extra detail that I've been talking about, and that's the kind of stuff you want to look out for at the thrift store. This wooden bowl was so affordable. It really gives off that Anthropologie look, but it was so budget friendly. When it comes to the abstract artwork you'll find at a store like Anthropologie, they have a lot of different options. And a lot of times when you go into the thrift store, you can kind of be overwhelmed by all of the pieces that are there. So my idea is to look on the website first, kind of really get a good idea of something you're drawn to, and then go to the thrift store with a plan. But don't stay limited to just like the artwork section of the thrift store. So I found this Opal House contact wallpaper for just 50 cents and it was never used. So I decided that was going to be this kind of pointillism artwork that I had seen at Anthropologie. I took an old frame and I was able to create something that looks pretty similar to this piece from Anthropologie, but for a much more affordable price point than $698. I call this kind of like the lazy girl version of this DIY project. You can obviously take a white canvas with some black paint and really DIY this from scratch, but this is just a quick and easy way to get this look on a budget. Another decor piece that Anthropologie carries a lot of different variations of are glass terrariums. And this is something that you can even do with things that you don't even have to go to the thrift store. You can just go around your house and outside and find things and put them all together to kind of get a similar look. So I found this glass vase in my stash. It was a beautiful day here in Ohio, so I went out in my backyard. I picked up these small little white rocks and I had my kids do this with me. They did their own little versions that I'll share one of them with you guys.
Very cool. Look, this one's got worms in there. That's awesome.
So this is kind of like a free version of a terrarium you could make, just adding different layers. But I did find two of these lanterns here for $2.99 a piece, and I decided I wanted to actually turn these into little terrariums. So same sort of deal. I ended up grabbing some white rocks from outside and some additional moss there, and then I just decided in these to put these little wispy flowers I had, and it just adds a nice kind of like whimsical moment on my bookshelf styling. Next up is the woven wall shelf. When I was in Anthropologie, the artwork, the furniture, the mirrors, a lot of it has this really beautiful softened kind of arch shape. So when my mother-in-law had asked me if I wanted this woven wall shelf, I said sure. So this wall shelf was pretty large in scale, and I really actually liked the tone of the woven material, but I didn't like the tone of this veneer here. It pulls a little bit too red for my floors specifically. So another thing that Anthropologie does a lot of is marble, and they make it feel really fun and interesting. So I like this black and gold and white pattern a lot. So I decided to order this contact paper on Amazon that I can link down below for you guys. And it was really affordable. I think it was under $7, and I still have so much left over. I started out by unscrewing each individual shelf so that way it would just be easier to apply the contact paper. Contact paper can be a little bit tricky. You guys have given me so many tips to spray a little bit of water down so it adheres really well. A few things I have learned when I'm applying contact paper is you want to make sure that you're doing it on a flat surface. It helps when you are working diagonally, and then having a X-Acto knife or a box cutter handy is really helpful, so that way you can just remove the excess that you don't need. And I just fold it up so it's out of my way, so that way I have a nice clean cut every single time. The bottom of the shelf actually adhered almost perfectly to the contact paper with very minimal bubbling, but the top was a bit warped, so you can see all of the bubbling happening here. So unfortunately I can't unwarp the shelf, but what I like to do is just take a small needle, poke a small little hole in the bubble, and then just kind of smooth it out with my fingers just to make sure all of the air has been pushed out and I get a nice clean seamless look in the end. A staple decor piece that you should be keeping your eyes out for at the thrift store is tinted glassware. So this could be in the form of vases, but it can also be in the form of just like your drinking glassware. And tinted glassware is one of those pieces that I always seem to come across at the thrift store, and it can be in all of these really fun colors. And this specific example I'm sharing with you is from my mother-in-law. She gifted me this huge box of tinted glassware, and some of the pieces that she gave me were almost dead ringers to something I would find at Anthropologie, but they were essentially free for me, so I decided to splurge on some florals at Trader Joe's, and I filled all of these beautiful vases with all of these beautiful florals, and it makes such an impact in your decor. If you have Anthropologie inspired style, I would say another decor category or decor piece you should really be keeping your eyes out for are kind of like distressed pottery pieces. Sometimes you can get really lucky and you can find exactly what you're looking for, but sometimes you have to DIY just a little bit. So for example, I had found this large jug at my local Goodwill and it was just $4. So I decided this was going to be the perfect project to do this on. It was already kind of damaged a little bit. I started off by just spray painting the entire vase a few times with some taupe spray paint that I'll link down below for you guys. It is like the perfect neutral if you are interested in distressing some pottery pieces that you might thrift. Once I had the level of coverage that I needed, I decided then to just seal it with a matte clear sealer, and then I'm going to go in and distress it. You can distress your pottery using many things, but a few things that I've tried are using dirt from outside. I've also tried using a gel stain that worked really well. And then this time I just wanted it to be kind of subtle. So I'm actually just going to rub moss all over the vase. And what's nice about this is it kind of further mattifies the vase with giving just the slightest amount of like a green hue. And I think that that was like a really nice combination for this specific project. I would just maybe wear gloves in the future so then that way you don't get any green on your hands, but it gives a really pretty overall earthy texture, but I still needed more. So I did decide to just do a little bit of the dirt trick. So I just took a little bit of damp dirt and I just kind of rubbed that all over. Why it's important to seal your project after you paint it is if you don't do this step, it will oftentimes just kind of wipe your paint right off when you do this mud trick, especially if you add water and especially if you're using chalk paint spray paint. So I do like to seal my projects really well before I apply any additional kind of texture to it. Once that mud mixture kind of all dried, I sealed it again and then was left with this. And I think that this looks so great. I barely spent any money to make this project and I think it looks really chic and high-end, Anthropologie inspired on a budget. As we've talked about already, Anthropologie uses a lot of brass in their decor, and one of the things that they do are these little brass wall hangings with like foliage, and they'll either hang like pictures from it or they'll be used as a jewelry hanger. So when I found these at the thrift store, I found 2 of them for just $1. To start this project off, I just decided to lay these kind of opposing sides and then I zip tied the pieces together. I used the leaves kind of strategically to hide the zip ties, so if you plan on doing a project like this, I would just recommend doing the same thing. What was nice is this was a metal piece of decor, so I was able to kind of manipulate the leaves to be exactly where I wanted them to be when everything was nice and solidified. And then it was just time to put it up on the wall doing this version, which was just to use the leaves to hang some jewelry. But then I remember I also got these little cards for free at a garage sale, and I decided that I was going to use these in some Dollar Tree frames. I'm gonna hang them with a gold chain just for an additional idea for you guys. I just hung each chain using a jewelry lock closure from The Wire, and that was that. Very simple project and super affordable to make. A print or pattern you'll see a lot of in Anthropologie and West Elm Decor is the Tortoise print. And again, that kind of goes back to that quirky quality that Anthropologie Decor can kind of have. And I remember the first vase I found was actually quite a large scale vase, and it was $7.99 at my local thrift shop. And I'm always styling it in different ways. For spring right now, I think I'm gonna put some tulips in here. But if you're at your thrift store and you're not having any luck finding any kind of like tortoise printed things in the vase and pottery section, try checking the light fixture section of your thrift store, because oftentimes you can find kind of a similar look. Another place that you can try checking is the drinkware section. So for example, I found these beautiful bright blue tortoise printed cups for just 75 cents a piece, and you can style these in a couple different ways. I'm going to style one with a candle and the other I can put some fresh flowers inside, and this whole situation to me very much reads Anthropologie. But the best part is this only cost $1.50 and I think can make a really big impact. Not only is it a pattern, it's boldly colored, and florals are some of the most eye-demanding pieces you can have in your space. So I think that when you incorporate all of those pieces together, they really make a huge impact. One of my favorite decor pieces at Anthropologie that I think they've ever carried in any line were these candelabras. I loved these so much. I think that they just feel really modern and minimal and nice. And when I was at the thrift store, I came across this one and it was just $3.33. So it was so affordable in comparison to the one from Anthropologie. It was a neutral color and it felt very modern as well. The only problem was none of the candles that I had fit into these holders. So I had to melt some wax down in each individual candle holders, so that way they would be able to sit upright. But this decor piece checked off so many boxes and was definitely a lucky find. So if you don't get so lucky, here is an alternative for you. So this was in a Dollar Tree video from a while back, and it was actually inspired by this Kelsey Gibby that I saw on TikTok. Starting off with a Dollar Tree plate and these pipe pieces that you can find at your local hardware store, and they're usually around $1 a piece. The Anthropologie example used 4 candles, but because my plate was kind of bowed, I didn't want to add too many and then the candles wouldn't be able to sit completely straight up. So I did decide to just use 3 in this case. After I kind of aligned each pipe down where I wanted it to go, I just added a little bit of hot glue to the bottom of each one of these, and then it is going to be time to paint. For this project, I wanted it to almost look like pottery, so I decided to mix equal parts of brown paint to equal parts of gray paint, and I stirred that together really well using a brush. And then to just thicken it up a bit, I'm going to take some baking soda and add it to our new color. I ended up having to do 3 coats total to completely cover everything, and then I sealed it once the paint had dried, and this was the end result. Another kind of quirky component you'll see of a lot in Anthropologie decor are mushrooms. And to be honest, I'm not sure how I feel about this trend necessarily, but one thing I do know is I want to do it as affordably as possible until I know how I feel about it. So for this project, you'll need a glass bowl. I think it helps if it has kind of a vintage inspired flair, and then a vase shaped like this one. And we're just gonna make a little mushroom light. I took a puck light with some super glue gel. I just attached it to the bottom of the bowl and then simply flipped the bowl upside down. Doing this gives me the opportunity to see how I feel about it before I decide to splurge on the Anthropologie mushroom lamp. Another project I had done that was inspired by something I had seen on Anthropologie was a gold flecked vase. So for this, I took an old bottle and I took some Mod Podge. Using the Mod Podge, I applied small little flecks of gold leaf and I attached those on to the bottle. And for the cap, so it didn't just look like an unfinished bottle, I just grabbed a cap from the hardware store and I had spray painted that gold to match the gold leaf, and this was the end result. And that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. I know a lot of my subscribers are definitely lovers of Anthropologie, so I hope you appreciate this video for what it is, and it gives you that kind of comprehensive list of things that you should be looking out for at your thrift store so you can really achieve that Anthropologie look on a budget. Until next time, I will see you next Sunday. Bye for now.